Okay. Okay.
Okay, Mayor, it is 3 o'clock.
All right, very good. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the March 2021 meeting of the work session for the Mayor and City Council of the City of Frostburg. Roll call whenever you're ready, Elizabeth.
Sure, thank you. Commissioner Donnie Carter,
Here.
Commissioner Nina Forsyth.
Here. Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Kevin Grove, I do not believe is here yet. I have not heard from him though. Commissioner Adam Ritchie
Here.
and Mayor Robert Flanagan.
I'm here, Liz.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Starting off with council meeting topics.
Okay. Brian Vogt, our Parks and Rec director, has been working with the local sportsmen's clubs on the rifle range agreement for some time now, as have I to some extent, and our city attorney, and the members of the sportsmen's clubs. So we have from Big Savage Sportsman's Club with us tonight, Bernie Zlomak, and Brian is on here as well. So I'll let Brian speak, and then if you have any questions for Bernie, he's on hand that he can answer them for you. Brian, you're on mute, I believe.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. The rifle range agreement has been updated from the previous agreement to address some safety concerns that we had with the rifle range. So the basic changes to this one compared to the last one is that we're going to require a training class for anyone that wants to use the range. It's sort of a training class that's geared more towards our range and the safety aspects of the range itself. So any of the club members that want to use the range would have to take that class and pass that class, get certified in order to use the range. The other thing that would be a little bit different is access is going to be more controlled. Anyone that wants to use the range would have to go to the police station to get the key to get into the range. And I think the other thing is, I believe we'll have some security cameras up there as well this time to kind of monitor things. There's a few rule changes just to make things a little bit safer as far as no firing out from under the covered area of the pavilion. So no one could be shooting in front of the firing line, which could create some safety concerns as well. Everything else has pretty much stayed the same. I can't think of anything that's significantly different. I don't know if Liz or Bernie would have any other comments on that.
Only if any of the council members have a question regarding the training.
Is there a provision for violations? What happens?
Yes, under termination, the city may terminate this agreement in the event of violation of its terms. Advance notice of such termination shall not be required.
I see that, yeah.
Also, there's a rule that states anyone found violating any of the established rules risk expulsion from the club as well as from the range and possible legal action.
That's good.
Yeah, you'll recall that many months ago,
Yeah.
we brought this to you, and There were some changes that the Sportsman's Club requested, and we have worked those out to everyone's satisfaction. Dealt with some of just the logistic things in terms of moving the keys to the police station, and the delay has been no one's fault other than my own, just in terms of having the time to dedicate this to this. But I feel pretty good about being able to present a good agreement that the club is agreeable to here before the weather gets nice, and that they can get back to using it here in April.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks
Everybody's
good.
okay?
Yeah, it
Everybody
looks
good?
good.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for hopping on, Bernie. Good to see
Yes.
you.
Thanks,
All right,
Brian.
sir. All
Thanks
right.
very
Good
much for
afternoon.
having me.
Sure
Thank you,
thing.
Brian.
Take care.
Um,
Okay. Moving on to the West End agreement. I'll let Brian talk about this one as I find Mr. Lashball here to ask him to unmute.
Okay, well, the West End Park lease agreement, this was originally requested by Mr. Lashbaugh in regard to the purchase of the old Moose Lodge building there on at the west end of Main Street. I think he was looking to use the pavilion for some of the things that he does there at the restaurant. And he was wondering about the possibility of originally purchasing or leasing part of the area. So as we discussed things, we decided to go with the recommendation from the Rec Commission back, I guess, in the February meeting, was to go with a lease agreement. In the lease agreement, it basically puts the maintenance of the park on Mr. Lashbaugh, and he would have use of that. Of course, the use would be somewhat restricted based upon what he intends to do there. And there would be stipulations that if he's not abiding by any city, state, or local regulations, that it could be cause for termination of the lease agreement. So it also it helps us out. If Mr. Lashbaugh is maintaining that area, it takes that much less off of our parks and maintenance crew that we don't have to worry about. And it actually generates a little bit of revenue for the city from the park that's typically not a heavily used area. It does allow for winter recreation in that area. I know that's a popular sled riding area. So I believe the lease addresses that as well, that it could be used for winter recreation.
And the city attorney did prepare this lease agreement based on some initial conversations we had with Mr. Lashbaugh, but we weren't able to get a clean version ready for his consideration until today. But because of concerns that we've had in other residential areas with businesses, there are some time and noise restrictions above and beyond the typical city noise ordinance to prevent those issues from arising again. So those are included in this section of the agreement. And the way this is structured, it would be a 1-year term, but it would automatically renew. Let me find that section. There we go. It would be an initial 1-year term, but it would renew for up to 14 additional years automatically. So that would give Mr. Lashbaugh some comfort in having a longer term agreement to use that pavilion before he made an investment. The thought behind this is just the ability to renegotiate the price. The city attorney and I had conversations about the 3% escalator versus what inflation or something unforeseen could do. And this seemed like the best way to protect the city's interests in terms of rent charge, but also give Mr. Lashbaugh some reassurance that this would be a long-standing lease. So I haven't heard any comments from Mr. Lashball about any of these provisions in here. So Jim, you're welcome to share your thoughts, comments, suggestions about the lease, and then
Sure, if I may.
Yep.
Everything looks in place. I have sent it off to Kathy Clark for review, and my insurance rep is going to make sure that we can cover all the requirements for the insurance part. I guess just a few questions that I had would be the renewal terms for 15 years. What would be the intent at the end of those 15 years?
we would just my contract as an employee, or many of our other lease contracts, just always do have an expiration, so that we can revisit the document, make any updates to it that has come about in the last 15 years, whether that's insurance requirements or legal requirements. But generally, I think if it is a satisfactory relationship, the intention would be to continue that lease beyond that, do a new lease for a similar period of time, assuming both
Understood.
parties are satisfied with the arrangement.
Yes, ma'am. And I see they did include first right of refusal, so if it ever does get sold, that we would have first option to purchase.
Yes.
Okay. I guess the only other question I have is, we're fine with the time limit, obviously. My only question is, that would exclude parking, correct? We can still park there. That was the initial thought in acquiring was just acquiring the parking. So the time from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. wouldn't affect parking before or after that time?
No, I do not. It wouldn't. That wasn't our intent. It was just having people outside in, a congregational setting was the point of the time limit. So I'll take a look at that, and if it needs clarification so that only applies to the use of the pavilion, we can make that correction.
Okay. Everything else looks well in line. And again, I know music is in the forefront because we have music, in Crystal Town, but that was not the initial or even the secondary use. The initial thing was parking. Second, I would love to have a couple crab feasts, if that would be acceptable out there. Music is an afterthought that we may or may not even have it out there. We do lots of benefits, lots of things like that for fundraisers, so I'd like to have those outside when the weather's good. Other than that, maybe use the field for we've had Easter egg hunts. It's a lot better in the field than lives in a parking lot. We had to spread a lot of hay, so that would be another use. Other than that, I would be in complete agreement with this. I guess any questions for me?
I'm a little confused. What do you mean about using it as a parking lot?
There's a parking lot that goes with it, ma'am.
There's a parking area behind the pavilion.
I guess it's been a while since I've been there.
Anyone else?
So that was the initial thought. I didn't want to, knowing that it was owned by the city, I didn't want to assume that if I had a good business that I could just use it without permission. So I just figured this was a better route.
Right.
Adam, Donnie?
No.
I think our major concern is just, it's a residential neighborhood. There are residences behind there and also across the street. So we want to make sure that, there isn't any kind of noise complaint or, anything like that when people are, trying to have a nice evening at home.
Yeah, and that was my concern too, but I think there is a provision in there to cover that.
Right. Yeah.
Jim, just had one question for you. It's Mayor Bob here.
Yes, sir.
Been kind of paying attention to your social media, and I know Kevin's not with us right now, but I'm sure you're aware that.
I have gotten on.
Okay. So Kevin, since you're in conversation with us now too, the post that you had on your Facebook page, from where I sit, and I'm sure that Commissioner Grove would agree with me, that it kind of left not the best taste in my mouth, that if there's a rule and there's a guideline, it appeared to me by your comments that if it didn't fit you, it wasn't something you were going to worry about. Could you clarify any of that for us?
Sure, and I mean, I got a lot of attention for that post, and I guess that was the intent. The intent wasn't that, I mean, it never came to that point, obviously. You know, that's a month away. The intent was to bring some attention to small businesses and making sure that they know we're still out there. To keep hearing, and we had fallen below the criteria set back in the fall, you know, to switch from stage to stage, and there's just been no talk of it. So perhaps I shouldn't have been so stern, but that was the intent. The intent was never to break any rules. I'm in constant communication with the health department. Actually, I talked to Karen on Friday, invited her down, the Friday prior to my post, invited her down for an inspection, talked to the liquor board, talked to B a lot. Actually, I just texted with Jake Shade, so he was aware, Mike McKay. So I'm in constant communication with, and the intent was not to be disrespectful at all, and that's what I communicated to Mike and to Jake Shade.
Well, saying permission or no permission it pretty much implies that you don't care what the rules are, and we certainly wouldn't want to encourage a business that had that kind of attitude.
Understood. Yes, ma'am. But that is not the intent. Obviously, our intent would be to work, you know, hand in hand and, you know, be an asset to the city, not be a detriment.
So I hope that in the future, your social media reflects that as well then.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kevin, you just come on. Anything you have?
No, that pretty much cleared things up. Of course, the understanding would be that if something was out of hand, the police department would have to handle it by law.
Understood. And again, all the other entities too, I mean, we follow the same guidelines as every other business, you know, for inspections from the health department, from the liquor board, you know, the same thing that everybody else follows. So we still have to follow those same entities come in for inspections, as well as now working with, not just with the county, but with the city of Frostburg.
Okay. All right, Jim, do you want to have your attorney review this and get back to us at your earliest convenience, all right?
Yes, sir. When should I have it back by?
Liz?
Mayor, are you and the council willing to consider this at the council meeting this month?
Yeah.
Adam?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Jim, so that gives you till Wednesday.
I'm sure it's fine. It looks fine to me. I just for my sake, just have him look and make sure the insurance requirements, he has that.
Sure.
And right now we're set up, I've talked to Brian a little bit, so we're set up to close on the property May 19th, which is next Friday.
March 19th. Okay.
That falls in line with everybody's schedule, I think. If approved, then we would purchase it next Friday, and then, you know, obviously I'll be reaching out for lots of help and direction on moving forward. So.
Okay, very good.
Okay, Jim. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right, Jim.
Have a good day.
You too. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. The next document is a electronics communication, cell phone, and IT use policy. This has been a much needed document for the city, and we don't have a strong or much of one at all right now. The impetus of bringing this to you now and not waiting until we have to incorporate this as part of a larger personnel manual is there's certain parts of the personnel manual that would kind of be standalone documents. This Family Medical Leave Act, discipline, those would kind of be not standalone documents, but separate chapters, if you will, in a personnel policy. But it's also something I've been working on in the last couple months of, right now we give cell phone stipends to our employees And it's problematic for various reasons, accounting side, Public Information Act side, etc. So in exploring different cell phone plan pricing for governments that do have good coverage here, we have looked and a cost neutral decision or a cost neutral option for us is to go to the FirstNet network, which will be happening as soon as this document is approved. But what FirstNet is after 9/11, and they did and cell phone networks were jammed on 9/11. The commission recommended a cell phone network that is prioritized for first responders in the event of catastrophe or emergency like that. So the foundation, and it works for both first responders and the essential people that would be on call or needed on hand in the event of emergency, which are those people are the people that do get cell phones at the city. So the cost of that per service a month is, I think, $39.95. We're giving a $40 stipend, and phones are 99 cents. So other than the cost of cases every now and then, or the replacement of a damaged phone, it should be a cost neutral decision. But in actually moving toward city-owned phones, it just brought to light the importance of having a policy that regulates the use of those phones. These phones would be city property. If there was a Public Information Act request on these phones, it would be much easier for me to access what is on those phones, and especially for police, where they were using their personal phones and taking pictures with their personal phones for police work. And then, you can imagine that not everything they take pictures of is pleasant, but then they have pictures of their kids. It at the time that was implemented, it probably was a cost savings to the city, but now with these government pricings on cell phones, I think it really makes sense to transition and just go with this. A few people aren't very happy that they're going to be carrying 2 phones now, but that is or will be addressed in this document. There's a few comments that aren't shown here that I made to the city attorney to clarify that. When people aren't working, I don't expect them to carry this new cell phone with them all the time. But so we'll still keep personal phone numbers to contact people in the event of an emergency that they need to be called out. So it's generally for their use while they're at work, and to be able to separate that. It keeps our water department guys from being called out by someone that has their personal cell phone to turn a water back on at midnight, when that should be handled through the finance office or something. It also just addresses proper use of emails and city computers. So it's all encompassing, but it mostly was, the need for it is moving to the city issued cell phones. So I think in very large part, everything about this is common sense, not to look at inappropriate or illegal things, or use your city email to run a business on the side or whatever else. But it does have provisions for being able to use city technology for a personal email or phone call here and there, as long as it's not abused. So I think it's pretty reasonable. There is at the end a document, a 1-pager that every employee will need to sign once this is approved by you. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns.
Anyone? Okay, Liz.
All right, I very well expect to have the clean version by mid next week from our attorney. So as soon as that's available, I'll post it to the agenda.
I suppose there will be a little bit of a learning curve as people who are used to using just one phone, they might accidentally make personal calls
Yeah.
on the city phone until they get used to separating the two.
Yeah, I mean, it's the amount of work numbers I have in my phone and just it's going to be a pain. There's no doubt it's going to be a pain, but in the long run, I think it's the best interest of the city and its employees. So
Yeah. I think especially for the Public Information Act, getting those messages, separate from one's personal stuff that you wouldn't want people prying into, it's a good idea.
And from what I understand, if there was a extensive Public Information Act request on text messages, AT&T would be able to help us retrieve, or FirstNet would be able to help us retrieve them. So.
Okay, looks good so far.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the surplus furniture at 59 East Main Street, City Hall. As you know, the new building is furnished with new desks and chairs and tables, and the things that will be moved to the new building are primarily map cabinets and file cabinets. There will be some furniture left at this building, or like miscellaneous little office organizational devices that don't have much value. Much of it is bented and dented, or military surplus, or heavily used.
Just not color coordinated.
And it's definitely not color coordinated. There's a few newer pieces of okay furniture, but there's really just nothing of extreme value. But that being said, it's not wise on the city's part to just throw it all into the landfill either. So what I'm proposing is, once we're moved out of this building and it's, clean and it's just the furniture's left, that we would have some sort of indoor yard sale where things are priced for 50 cents, $1, $5, and $10, and just to get rid of it.
Price to go.
Yeah, and it'd be first come, first serve. It wouldn't be anything formal. The objective is just to get rid of it. So we don't really have a law regulating how we dispose of surplus property, but generally in the past, we do a resolution. So if it's okay with you and that plan, I'm open to suggestions, of course, but if that plan's okay with you, we just do a resolution to declare what's left in this building surplus property and sell it or give it away, whatever it takes. So.
What column would the funds from that go into?
Just the general fund.
Okay.
The $112 we're going to get, I wouldn't get too excited about. If we're lucky. Okay,
Sounds
is that
like a
all
good
right?
plan.
Okay.
Yep.
Just trying to reduce the amount of time it takes for us to get rid of it and still be able to do it. So, okay, thank you. The next is, so the Frostburg Legion Memorial Park is the area in front of Mountain Ridge where the one Christmas tree goes each year. And Roy Stouty with the Legion reached out to me because he had recalled that the city had an agreement in 2018 to pay for the electric at that park, or at least to offset the electric at the Christmas season, to light the Christmas tree. Going back through meeting minutes and documents of the administrator, Kirby, at the time, the best I can tell is that it never was, an agreement was never formally come to at the council meeting or work session because of just the Legion, and like it just didn't happen. People weren't coming to the meetings they were expected to. And so then a check for $250 was issued to the Legion to cover the electric costs in 2018. Knowing that the electric costs down there are minimal, knowing that this is an asset to our community as the entrance to the community, what I would propose is just putting that electric account in the city's name. I think it will be somewhere between $250 and $350 a year. That helps the Legion out, which is of course struggling like most fraternal organizations. And it protects the Christmas tree being lit and the flags being lit down there as well.
I'm fine with that.
I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not a significant thing, but I think there should be a resolution for that, just to document that decision. So that will be on your council meeting as well. In terms of announcements, the Director of Public Works has been selected. Rob Shoemake, a local gentleman, has been selected for that position, and he will be starting on Monday. We have programmed 6 weeks of overlap between him and Chris Hovatter, so there should be a good amount of time for Chris to transfer some of that institutional knowledge, but 6 weeks will never cover 42 years. So, but he'll be joining us virtually for the work session or the council meeting next week. And the move to 37 Broadway, last month when we met, I was very optimistic that we would be moving toward the end of this month. There's still hope that we'll be moving at the end of this month, but because of the nature of moving the IT and 911 communications, the radio systems, the phone systems, it really has to be an orchestrated event between the police. It's more significant for the police department than City Hall, and my plan all along has been to move the police department in first. So it needs to be an orchestrated and planned event. So if it doesn't look like by tomorrow that we're going to be able to move the police department on March 24th, I'll have to push that date back just because of scheduling everyone. And then City Hall would likely follow the week after. There's also considerations of, does it make sense to move in and then have the paving contractor here 2 days later? Like, it just makes sense to wait another week at that point. So most of the building's done, but there's just things like an elevator that's laying in pieces in the lobby and I'm assured that it'll be taken care of next week. Or the railing that the glass isn't here for. Things like that are or the concrete steps into the police department. Those are kind of crucial things that we can't move in without. So at this point, I'd say early to mid-April is a more realistic timeline. But I'll keep you posted as we move if we move those dates.
Okay.
The furniture is in though, and it looks really good. And I'm excited for a council meeting in real life there, so. You've
With
never had
balloons and
such a
everything.
nice, well, yes, and you've never had such a nice table to sit at, so. That'll be good for everyone. Okay, moving on, budget. I guess the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about regarding the budget is yesterday into today, with the stimulus bill passing, we found out that there is going to be a significant amount of money directed to local governments. Admittedly, this wasn't on our radar to be preparing for this influx. And at this point, we have just received very high-level summaries of what this funding will be able to be used for over the next 3.5 years. It includes revenue replacement for the provision of government services to the extent the reduction in revenue due to COVID-19 public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent fiscal year prior to the emergency. That's a mouthful. Premium pay for essential workers, assistance to small businesses, households, and hard-hit industries, and economic recovery. That includes tourism and economic development, and investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. In the coming weeks, senior staff will work to identify planned or proposed infrastructure projects and the associated costs, as well as looking at other ways these funds can be used to support our community and have long-lasting benefit to Frostburg. We will present this information to you for your review and so that you can provide staff with direction on your priorities. It is not often that we experience unplanned revenue of this magnitude, so I can expect it will take a lot of effort to spend these funds in a way that have a lasting impact on Frostburg and ensure these funds are spent in accordance with all of the federal guidelines. So all that being said, the agenda presented today doesn't take into consideration any of that. And I don't know that we will be able to prepare a budget that can accurately reflect this at this point in time. So like last year, we went into the budget season at the beginning of the pandemic, just really uncertain and trying to budget with the best information that we had at the time. And it looks like, for a completely different reason, we will be heading into this year with a budget that might not actually reflect what is going to happen over the next 3.5 years. So that's the big thing. Elaine's worked really hard on preparing a draft budget for you. But first, I thought I'd go over the hotel motel tax requests. Unlike past years when we've done in-person hearings for people to present their requests, this year they were all just emailed to me or mailed to me in advance. The entire packet of all of those requests are attached. But I'll go back to this summary. The amount requested, so I have two columns here, the fiscal year 20 allocation and the fiscal year 22 request. Last year, as you recall, for fiscal year 21, you provided Frostburg First with their operating monies. You provided the Aryan Band with their monies, and you provided the county with money to do the solar lighting of the Borden Tunnel project that you had committed to prior to the pandemic. And then, so I didn't include that year on here. I included the 20 year just kind of as a baseline of what a normal hotel motel tax year looks like. So probably the significant change is Frostburg First with their 501c3 designation and many grants that they were able to obtain in the last year has reduced their request by 20,000. That I think is a real victory for the city and Frostburg First, because that's been a long standing conversation about them building their financial independence. And that's great to see that they're doing that well.
Yeah, good job.
They did not request the A&E district grant money because this year, because of COVID, that grant does not require matching funds. So that's something that I would expect to come back. There is no trolley anymore, and the bus service, they at this time they didn't request any money for that, depending on when the train's running again. Standard, same request across the board from Chassis Classy Cultural Events. The Foundation of Frostburg has submitted a new request for website hosting in the amount of $200. Many of these other requests have remained the same. The dog park has requested $5,000 for fencing repairs. The Frostburg Museum has reduced their request by half. The Center for the Literary Arts has reduced their request by half. The Arts Council has increased their request slightly to $2,000. The Palace Theater has increased their request by $1,000 to $3,000. Obviously, they've lost all revenue the past year. The Lamppost Committee has reduced their request to $2,100, which some of that would go to the tree lighting ceremony. The UMC's Watershed Moments requested nothing just because of the pandemic and not knowing when they'd be able to have those events in person again. And the Allegheny Museum for the Thrasher Carriage Museum has requested $4,000. This would be matching grant funds for video AV production featuring the carriages. And we did not receive request for the recognition wall or Miss Frostburg. So the subtotal for all of those is $66,250. Assuming that vaccination trends and COVID trends continue in the positive direction, and travel increases, I think it's likely that we can expect to see $100,000 to $110,000 in hotel motel tax revenue, which usually we use that to supplement the pool economic development efforts, any special small projects, and other recreation amenities, and beautify the burg. So typically that number has been around 30,000. So this would allow the city to put a little bit more money to those programs. One being this year is the 100th anniversary of the pool. So having some funding to have a pool celebration might be nice. And we're tentatively looking at the weekend of July 10th. That's Saturday for that. So if there's any trims or additions that you would like to see made to these requests, we'd be happy to make those changes. But I just wanted to give you a brief explanation for your discussion.
Did the Arts Council give any indication why they were asking for more?
I can pull that letter up.
And the only reason I ask is because I from sitting in on the Frostburg First meetings and talking to people on Frostburg First, they feel like they don't get a whole lot of help from the Arts Council, or feel like they're included in a lot of stuff still. I mean, after, I don't know how many years, it's still so focused on Cumberland with everything.
There's the letter from the Arts Council, and I'll read, excuse me for just a second. I needed to sneeze. Okay. General operations in the budget year. And then I know this Michael Snyder exhibit is coming to Frostburg and Cumberland. LJ's been working on that, but from the letter, it just looks like assistance for their general operations.
Yeah, so it's not actually earmarked for like those big posters that are going to be coming up for the Mike Snyder exhibit that are going to be all Frostburg.
No, LJ probably, if she's available to speak on that, she can talk about how that's being funded.
I know some of it is coming actually from Frostburg First. I think they secured some grant funding for that. And I think some of it is coming from the Arts Council, if I remember correctly.
There is definitely a collaboration with the Arts Council. Paying for the printing of the artwork, however, is falling on Frostburg First and a grant that they have garnered, and grant funding from Mr. Snyder as well. Community Development offered to pay for the preliminary print, and I expect to have that hopefully by tomorrow. I was really looking forward to having that this week for everyone to be able to view, and I'm hopeful for tomorrow. If not, then early next week.
So Donnie, are you thinking maybe?
I mean, I'm looking at it, and everybody else either stayed the same or dropped, and they went up. I mean, take it back to where, 1,500.
I don't have any heartburn over that, if anyone else does.
It seems like everybody else is trying to work with us because, of what happened over the past year. I mean, hotel revenues in the county were down 50 to 60%. It's, I don't know. I have
times like this, you want people to be good team players, realizing that, it's still going to take a while to see these revenues start to increase. And we're projecting, I think, a good number, but I do agree with you on that, Donnie. I think that's, stay where you were and get your restart.
I mean, we definitely want the arts community in Frostburg to be able to be part of the recovery. I just didn't see anything mentioned in the letter from the Arts Council that would enable that.
Yeah. Anyone else have any item of concern?
Elizabeth, we don't actually go back to organizations to ask for clarification, do we? Or, I mean, do we just go by their initial letter?
That's historically what we've done, but I mean, you've also had the past, and you also had the opportunity in the past to speak with the people that were presenting in person.
Right.
That was never a requirement, but
I don't remember them coming to present.
I don't think they have. Yeah.
We can make that adjustment and move forward.
Yeah. Okay.
one thing that I talked about last year that didn't happen in regards to the FBPA free Saturday parking. Before I was administrator, I falsely assumed that $1,000 went to supplement our lost parking meter revenue. But that's not what it's used for. It's used for the FBPA to promote free parking on the radio stations or where have you. And in my mind, I think getting a vinyl sticker that could be removed with a solvent or something, but otherwise weatherproof, to put on the meters and spending a few $100s on those stickers would probably be the best promotion, especially for people that don't live in the community. However, I guess Kevin can say we do get a lot of quarters on Saturdays for people that don't know different. So
Pays for a lot of coffee.
Yeah, right.
So I just wanted to clarify that, because that was a sort of a surprise to me, whether you wanted to just continue with that arrangement or look at some other options.
If we want to do, that would be our own advertising program. So I think that could be, I don't know, kind of cover that base, I would think.
Yeah.
Kevin, you okay?
Yeah, we could do stickers maybe, and of course promote it on our webpage and stuff,
Right.
and see how that would work. We'd have to obviously have stickers that would be easy to remove at some point, but if they could be a sticker that would be in a place that you don't have to put them on once and say, would say Saturday free parking, and then as they wore out, you could put one over it.
Yeah.
Compliments to the mayor and city council.
Yes.
Yes.
I think too, advertising it on, on social media and stuff, we can hit more people that way than probably the radio.
So what would you like me to do with that number?
Let's get a price on the stickers and then go from there.
Okay.
Actually, they do put it up on the marquee, and I think that does kind of garner some attention. So maybe, I don't know, I think it costs what, $300 for the marquee, something like that?
$75 a week, I think. I'm not sure.
So maybe reduce it to that amount, something like that.
Yeah, let's see what the stickers cost, and then we can kick that number.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. All you, Miss Lane.
So we will try to make this as painless as we can and give a brief overview and not get into the weeds too much today. So we are we're actually continuing our budget cycle right now. We are legally required to have a budget, as you're aware, and it's a very effective management tool for the city. It helps us establish our objectives at the beginning of the fiscal year and share these objectives with the public. And throughout the year, the budget assists in managing and controlling the resources that we have and their use. Because ultimately, the city is a steward of the public resources entrusted to us by the citizens. And to the public, we are ultimately responsible. So our budget process began over a month ago as the department submitted their budget requests in consultation with you as the council. And we have worked in revising estimates of revenues and expenses with the best available data that we have. And as we present the draft budget, we try and present it in the most conservative approach. While trying to be accurate with our estimations, we tend to underestimate revenues and overestimate expenses in the beginning process. And then as we get better information, we revise these estimates. So at this point, the draft budget is not balanced, as would be noted in the condensed summary by fund and by department. You'll see revenues listed in the left-hand column, expenses by department in the center column, and the net being, if it was net income, it would be a positive number. If it was a net loss at this point, meaning expenses exceed revenues, you see that in parentheses. So there will be a lot of fine tuning between this draft budget and the introduction of the budget ordinance that we will present next month. As Elizabeth referenced, we've already received information even in the last 24 hours since these materials were prepared for the meeting that will potentially result in adjustments to the budget. We're also awaiting additional information from our insurance carriers regarding quotes for our health insurance, property insurance, and our workers' comp insurance for the coming year. So the mayor and council were provided with the details of the draft budget in advance of this meeting so that you could review the information and have a chance to digest and the information, develop some questions, and help you with your decision process today. Today, we would ask for your decision
Elaine, we're losing you.
regarding a real estate tax rate. Can you still hear me?
We lost you for a minute, but you're back now.
Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. I don't know why that would be.
If you want to stop your video, that might help.
Okay, let me try that. Okay. So first, I just want to give you a general overview of the draft budget, and then I can address any questions that the mayor and council have regarding any specific budget line items or any of the assumptions presented. First, if we look at our revenue projections for the corporate fund, and if you could scroll down, Elizabeth.
Sorry.
That's okay. So for the corporate fund, we are looking in the draft budget at increasing the real estate tax rate from 68 cents to 70 cents per $100 of assessed value. The constant yield rate that was provided to us by the state is 66.8 cents. That's based on our net assessable base increasing about $1.8 million. So the constant yield rate takes the assessable base and it calculates a rate that would be required to have the same revenue as the prior year. That's where that rate is determined. So the draft budget also includes a personal property tax increase of just over 8 cents per $100. We have seen that we have had flat or declining personal property assessments during this past year. So a small rate increase would help maintain current revenues for the next fiscal year. At this point, we are looking at having consistent income tax revenue from the prior year, as well as consistent highway use tax, although we have not been provided with any details from the state yet. We should have that in the coming weeks. And as discussed earlier, we are optimistic that we will get back to a pre-pandemic hotel motel tax revenue similar to what we had in the year before last. As far as our revenue projections in the proprietary funds, in the water fund, we're looking at consistent water consumptions. We had very low consumption last year. I can't imagine it going much lower than it did, although we had seen decreasing trends over the previous year. So our revenue estimates are based on consumption staying consistent and all the rates remaining unchanged other than the bulk rate to Allegheny County. The county rate is recalculated every 3 years, and this is the year of that recalculation. And we're working with the county to finalize that rate, but we do expect a slight increase in the rate and therefore an increase in revenue from county water sales. The sewer fund, we're also projecting consistent billed consumption from the prior year and the rate remaining unchanged. In the sewer fund, we also are anticipating continued CSO project reimbursements from MDE. And there's also a small amount of grant funding that we are looking forward to for the Centennial Hill Pump Station replacement. And we would also anticipate transferring some CDA loan proceeds that were initially designated for the municipal center, but were not likely to be needed since we got the additional capital grant. So then moving on to the surcharges for CSO and water surcharge. The billing units are tied to consumption, and we do that recalculation every February. So because last year we had several months when FSU students were not on campus, we had a general decline in revenue that affected our billing units. So therefore the surcharge rates, not the rate, excuse me, the surcharge units will be lower for the next year. We're hoping that we'll see some rebound when we calculate the rates again in February of 2022, but we do have to look at decreasing revenue for CSO and water surcharge in the coming year. And for the garbage fund, there really have not been any significant changes. We have consistent billing units and would recommend the same rate. Now on the expense side, if we look citywide, the budget that's presented for you today includes a salary increase of about 75 cents an hour for full-time employees. And this would impact the corporate fund, water, sewer, and garbage. And that increase in the hourly rate then passes through to employee benefits, like payroll taxes, pension, workers' comp. So when we look at that potential increase, the impact of that salary increase would be about $55,000 across the city budget. And we're also looking at potential increases in all of our insurance rates compared to prior year trends. You'll see there were certain special purchases that were requested by the departments in their initial budgets, and you can see those itemized in the list. If we move on then and look at our expenses by fund, if you compare the budget year that we're in right now, which is fiscal year 21, and the budget overall for the next fiscal year based on the draft budget, overall, the budget will be decreasing citywide by about $2.5 million. The big change that you'll see is in the corporate fund, and that's because in the current fiscal year, we budgeted for the construction of the municipal center. So with that being completed by June 30, you'll see the corporate fund expenses dropping back to a level just over $5 million. You see consistency among the other funds. In the sewer fund, the change reflecting an increase in the 22 budget relates to the Centennial Hill Pump Station replacement and also the CSO projects. If we then focus down and look at it graphically, you'll see that the corporate fund and the sewer fund are both the biggest components of the citywide budget, each of those being approximately 40% of the budget, just over $5 million a piece. And then, of course, the water surcharge and garbage funds have much lower percentages of total expenses citywide. On the revenue side, in the corporate fund, as you're very well aware, real estate taxes make up about half of the city's revenue. The corporate fund is how we account for all general government operations. So with the real estate taxes being the largest piece of the pie, we have some other tax categories, income tax, personal property tax, highway use tax, but none of that compares to the impact of the real estate taxes. And if you note, there is very limited resources that come to the city from our recreation, public safety, and community development activities. Then if we look at the expenses by department within the corporate fund, you'll see public safety is definitely the largest expense within the city. In the corporate fund, at just about 40% of the city's budget. Street department follows closely behind. Within public safety, of that, just over $2 million, about 3/4 of that budget includes salaries and benefits for employees. It also includes support for the Frostburg Fire Department of around $223,000. So in the street department, the salary and benefit piece of that $1.1 million, only 30% of that is for employee salaries and benefits there. You'll see for salt and abrasives, we spend about $150,000. So almost half of what you're spending for employees, you have to put into salt and abrasives for the winter. Also, street lighting is a big component of the street department budget. That's about $155,000 a year. Street paving is budgeted around $120,000. So those are the largest components of the corporate fund expenses. If you put all the other departments together, it basically equates what we have to pay for public safety. So that is a very important part of our budget. And our proprietary funds, also more commonly known as the utility funds, you'll see most of the revenue comes from user charges. In the sewer fund, the largest source is our grant funding. And most of that comes from MDE for our CSO projects. So just a quick look at the utility funds individually to see where those expenses come from. In the water fund, the largest percentage is definitely for the treatment plant. We have a contract with MES to run our water treatment plant. We have a 5-year contract, and we will be in the first year of the next 5-year contract with budgeted payment to them of about $612,000. Next largest category of expenses within the water fund is for the salaries and benefits for employees. In the sewer fund, the largest portion of the expenses is for the CSO projects at just over $3 million, almost 60% of the budget. The next largest expense is for our sewer treatment costs, also referred to as sanitary commission. You'll see that's almost 1/4 of the sewer fund budget. Surprisingly, only a very small percentage is actually for the salaries and benefits of employees in the sewer fund. In the surcharge fund, it is used almost entirely for debt service. We have principal and interest payments on the debt related to our water supply. And then the remainder of the expenses are for capital repairs needed at the water treatment plant and at Piney Dam. So the Director of Public Works has developed a list of priority projects, both at the Piney Dam and the water treatment plant. And that's part of what is budgeted here under capital repairs in the surcharge fund. And finally, in the garbage fund, you'll see about half of the budget is related to salaries and benefits of employees. And then we have landfill charges, which continue to increase incrementally each year. That's about 31% of the budget projected for the coming year. You'll notice there are overhead calculations in the water, sewer, and the garbage fund. This is based on a prescribed formula by the Public Service Commission, and the overhead calculations will continue to be adjusted as we revise the budget. So just a snapshot of where we are in our budget preparation schedule. Today, we're presenting to you a draft budget. You've already reviewed the hotel motel requests. We are anxious to hear the council's discussion of your thoughts regarding the real estate and the personal property tax rates, as well as your consideration of the utility and surcharge rates. If you're in agreement to leave the surcharge rates as are, if you would like us to consider changing those rates. We do have a legal requirement regarding advertisement if we choose to change the real estate tax rate above the constant yield rate. So I would be very happy to address any general questions you have regarding the draft budget. If you had questions on specific line items in the detail that were provided to you prior to the meeting. Otherwise, we'd be anxious for your feedback and your comments regarding this draft budget.
Go around the room.
That was a very nice, the graphics I think were very helpful to give a visual representation of what all the line items stand for and how they look relative to each other. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I did have a couple questions, just things that I don't understand. The line items for the draft operating budget that you presented to us prior to the meeting. I think it's page 2, where it says operating transfer to the water fund, to the sewer fund, to the garbage fund. I don't just
That
like
is
to,
yes, that is the overhead so it comes in as a revenue source to the corporate fund. It's an expense in each of the utility funds. So for example, in the water fund, you'll see overhead. And that calculation, as I mentioned, is determined by the Public Service Commission. It's a formula based, so it looks at the expenses in different categories of the corporate fund, as well as the expenses of the each of the utility funds. And in essence, it's creating an obligation of the utility funds to reimburse the corporate fund for administrative expenses that the corporate fund incurs in order to manage the water fund.
I see. Okay.
For example, the corporate fund handles the billing of each of the utilities and manages, many aspects of that. So that's what that represents. You'll see the matching number in the corporate fund revenue with the expenses in the utility funds.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
I had another one.
Sure.
It's under the public safety section. Ambulance financing was $30,000, but for the draft budget, nothing. So that must have been a decision. It's not covered anymore because somebody else is covering it, or what?
Would you like to address that, Elizabeth?
Unless the mayor wants to.
You start, I'll finish.
Okay.
I'd be happy to start if you need to. When the county took over the responsibility for ambulance service in the city of Frostburg, the city had a commitment to supply $30,000 to the county over a period of was it 3 or 4 years? I'm not sure.
I think it was 3 years.
So that specific obligation, we have fulfilled within the current year.
Okay.
That way it was not specifically budgeted as a line item in the current year budget.
Oh, okay.
And Elizabeth can elaborate some more.
In addition to that, we've recently got a correspondence from the county that they have reevaluated the tax differential for the municipalities, which means when the county provides a service and the city provides the same service, we get a percentage, our residents get a percentage reduction in their county taxes that they owe because they're already paying city taxes for that service.
Awesome.
But that only applies to services that we both provide. So for example, we don't get a credit for providing parks and recreation because the county doesn't do that. So it's like 4 or 5 categories, but the differential looks to decrease, which would mean an effective tax rate increase for county taxes for our residents because of paying for EMS services. Before, this was a volunteer private operation, and over the past several years through, and as you've seen in many times news articles, there's a EMS division at the county. The county runs the Frostburg ambulance service as others in the county, and the EMTs, paramedics, are generally paid. So it's our understanding that the county is looking for the city residents to pay their equitable share of for the EMS services in the county, which would then mean they did no longer needed to pay for the
city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mayor and I are meeting with the county administrator next week to discuss just the calculations and everything and get a better understanding. I might need Rob to come along for math help. I don't know. It's all simple formulas, but or simple math, but the complicated formulas, I suppose. So anyway, so we'll keep you posted as to what we learn and what transpires at that meeting.
Okay. And then I think just one more question, just a little bit farther down under the public works. I assume that the communications, that huge jump there, that has to do with FirstNet?
No, that's the request that I've put in to upgrade our radio system for the street department. Right now, we have a radio system in all the street department vehicles, as well as water department and rec department vehicles. We have one transponder. I don't know if that's the right word.
Repeater, right.
Repeater, there we go, thank you. We have one repeater right now that the city maintains on a tower somewhere, and it doesn't provide ample coverage, but probably the bigger issue is that all of our radios are not FCC compliant. And so that's one issue. The other issue is that, so our radios only work half the time. They're not FCC compliant. And now we're starting to receive new vehicles as part of the fleet lease operation. And it doesn't make sense to put antiquated radios in these new vehicles and spend the money on on that.
Right.
So the county 911, so this would upgrade the street and water departments to the same radio system that our police department's using. The county pays for the radios for police through grant money that they get for our police department. They don't have enough grant funding to pay for the radios for our water and sewer departments. But when they installed this new radio system that I think we will have at least four repeaters that serve Frostburg, they reserved a bandwidth for the city public works. So there would be no cost to us on the repeater side, whereas now there is. So it's until these radios no longer work or technology changes again, this is a one-time cost.
I see. Okay.
That line item includes $68,000
right
for the street department, and the remainder of that line item would be for their internet service for the rest of the year.
Okay. It just seemed like a big jump, so I was wondering about that. Okay.
The other nice thing about the radio system is will be all the state highway and county roads are having the same conversation as we are right now. So our street department in a snowstorm, if they come across an accident or something, they will be on the same radio system that they can radio our police department, or they can communicate with state highway, or they can communicate with the county roads. And just when driving a truck, a cell phone is not a legal or safe option to be using, especially to communicate with the whole fleet. So the radio system still is needed.
Okay. I think that was it for my questions.
Anyone else?
Nope.
Okay, I had just two things that I wanted to make mention of. And I know Adam and I hadn't talked about this, but I know he's been out looking at streets, and he and Chris, and I think Rob's going to get involved with that as well. I really am concerned that moving forward, as the pandemic goes away, and we discussed, Liz and I discussed that it probably won't affect us as much this year as it will next, but as petroleum starts getting used up a lot more than it has been over the last, say, 12 months. You already see that Chevron's posting new highs in their stocks, and a lot of other companies are as well, that we're going to continue to see fuel prices go up. And as fuel prices go up, the cost of petroleum-based bituminous concrete is going to go up. But just in taking a ride, and Nina, I'm going to use your street for an example. I come down Centennial just a couple, two maybe weekends ago, on Saturday, and I know that we try to do a pretty good paving project every year, but I'd like to see us maybe try to slide another 10 or 15% into that this year, to hedge not only against the future, but just the fact that we do have a lot of secondary neighborhood streets that the last couple of winters have really had a hard toll taken on them. And again, we're looking at increasing the cost to our customers. So I think we should try to give some of that back if we could. And I know that one thing you can definitely do to make people happy is pave their street. So I'd like to, I had mentioned this to Liz, and so I know Elaine's aware of it. So again, might not be a whole lot, but maybe instead of 120, we look more like at 135 for paving this year. Not knowing where this new federal money is going to go at this point, I still think it's worth more than a discussion. Again, like I say, I think it's real important. The other thing I was looking at was, is maybe budgeting for our raises this year, as we did last year. I thought was a real good financial move, that maybe we come in with 60% in July, and then the secondary, like a 40% of that increase in January, to try to step our costs back if we can a little bit, which would still be a nice increase for everyone come July. And again, then it'd kind of be like the Christmas bonuses coming, the first of the year. So those were my two budget items. More than welcome to discuss either or both of them.
No, I agree with you, Mayor. I think that, a little more in the paving budget, would be very, helpful. We had a little bit, a harder winter this year than we have in the past. So some of the streets are they're looking pretty rough.
Yeah. And I know I was using Centennial just for example, that I grew up on the hill, pedaled that street, had friends that lived on Centennial. And I can't remember when the last time that street was totally overlaid, or even a couple blocks of it. Top of Hill Street. We got to get some paving on Hill Street done. And Barry is, because of its width, I know is a very expensive street. But I think we kind of got to spread the icing around here as much as we can.
Yep, I agree.
Liz, you don't know if we'll be able to use those funds for any kind of infrastructure like that?
So from what I've seen, it just covers water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Whether the roundabout project, for example, has been a big priority, and we have a lot of ARC access road money for that. But there's a budget shortfall estimated right now around $1 million. But some of that cost is because the slope of that intersection is going to change coming off of Welsh Hill or Park down onto Center. The utilities are probably going to have to be relocated. So would it pay for the utilities in there if we had grant money to cover the rest? I hope so. Now, if we dig up a street as a utility project to replace, 100 feet of water line, let's say, I would assume, like our CSO projects, that this money could be used to pave the street as well. So that might be an interesting way at looking at some utility projects. that I mean, I know there's sections of bad water line throughout town that we just don't have the money right now to do a comprehensive replacement, and we do smaller replacements as we can, so.
Might afford us that chance to do Meadow and some streets that we know could really use that infrastructure improvement.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I know that, we couldn't do it last year, but hopefully we can do some more of the tar and chip double
coverage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's on my list to talk to the county about, is when we kind of need to know that they're on board for that, so we know how much, so you guys are able to plan how much you want to blacktop versus tar and chip and create
Right.
your priorities that way.
I know there's there's a lot of alleyways around that really could benefit from that.
Mhm.
It's not as expensive as paving,
Yep. And it's a really good base, so it might be best to do that on the alleys where it's,
Right.
rumbly tumbly or whatever. you wanna call it.
Absolutely, yeah. Off-roading.
Yeah. So, okay. Are you comfortable with the 2-cent property tax increase and that 8-cent personal property tax increase that was proposed?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll get those advertisements prepared.
Thank you, Elaine.
You're welcome. If there's any other questions that you come up with, feel free to stop by, contact me by email anytime.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, Laura is on to talk about allocating the balance of the facade grant money that we received for this current or last state fiscal year.
I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion.
Thank you. Today, we'd like to present another group of the projects for the facade program and request your approval to allocate the funds to each of them as listed. We have 4 projects today, and as our administrator mentioned, this will use up the remainder of the funds from the FY20 facade grant. A lot of good projects here this time. We have a couple that are high dollar projects that will have a really good leverage or return on our dollars investment on Main Street. So they're listed there. We have one that is more to create an access, an ADA access to the apartments on the upper story, and that's the building that houses Independent Inc. We also have some electrical upgrades and storefront improvements at the Nickel building. That one I didn't have a total cost on the project. It's going to be much more than what double that grant amount is. Also, then we have at the Toasted Goat, a new outdoor dining area that'll be added. And in the Fiber Depot, interior storefront improvements that looked like it was mostly a big flooring project. And then those will use up the remainder of our funds there for the year. And unless anyone has any questions, I'd like to ask that you give us permission to allocate these funds to proceed with the projects for this year.
And these are the only ones that applied.
This year, we did things a little bit differently. In the past, I believe there was only one advertisement, and then the whole grant for that year was kind of allocated at once. This year, a lot of it was because of COVID. We had a whole group of people that I had been working with that had an interest in applying. But when we first advertised in September, some of the people indicated that they weren't ready at that time when their businesses had just kind of come back online. So We did one group for the people who were ready to go then, early in September. In October was when we allocated the money, and then worked with that group. And we have some projects already in progress right now. Then an additional one was allocated, I believe, in November, and then an additional one after that. So we have, I think, 6 projects already in progress. That used up about half of the money from the grant, just under $25,000. The total was a $50,000 grant. So this is about the second half of that money to use it up for the year. And the entire project, it's a 2-year period to complete it all. So we have until the end of this calendar year then to complete these projects.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Laura? Thank you, Laura, for your time today.
Thank you.
Scoot.
Okay, not yet.
Not yet. City. No, we're got City Place work. We're all excited. Nina's really excited to see everybody sees bird scooters.
Okay. I'll start. So last month I kind of presented a just very general concept about changing the parking arrangements at City Place. So I'll bring up the map here. There are 14 spaces in this lot that are currently unmetered, but we restrict parking so there's no 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. parking. The main reason for that is so that we can get in there and plow snow. Hadn't been heavily enforced, so there were some overnight parking that was taking place. But when we started getting snow this year, enforcement stepped back up and more requests came in about the opportunity to lease spaces there. The difficulty in saying no is that there's a few spaces up in this area that are associated with Dr. Tan's office, and then there's some spaces down here that are associated with the bank. Those have been both long-standing. The bank does pay a $20 fee a month, and then the Dr. Tan doesn't pay any fee. There is another city parking lot that we sell passes for that's right off the screen here. But there's 11 spaces there alongside that apartment building. And those permits are $20 a month, but we only average selling about 3 to 4 of those. So what I did is I identified buildings in the 1 block area that don't have off-street parking, to my knowledge. And there's 9 of them. So it's not quite as easy as saying every building gets 2 spaces because we don't have 18 spaces. We only have 14 spaces. But some of these other buildings, I assume, already have parking arrangements. So what I'm proposing is that we would follow this plan here where we would reach out to the building owners that do not have access to off-street parking and assess their level of interest in purchasing a parking pass or multiple parking passes. If the demand does not exceed the availability, we would make those parking passes available in the quantities requested. But if there were demand did exceed the available spaces, we'd give every building owner 1 space, and then, or however many building owners wanted a space, they would, or not give them, but they'd be able to buy a pass for 1 space, and then we'd use a lottery system to distribute the passes to the remaining interested building owners. Because of the cost of maintaining this lot and just the convenience of it, and I'm proposing a fee of $400 per year, but these would be transferable. So if you have a tenant that's moving out in June, that tenant, the building owner could actually purchase that parking pass if they wanted, and then give that pass to take the pass from the tenant in June and give it to their tenant coming in July. Or if you had an employee that had a pass, that employee could, and that employee moved on, you could give it to your next employee. Because of trying to make sure that the spaces are given out fairly, it's kind of hard to do this any more frequently than on an annual basis. There's the retaining wall up there is got a significant failure issue in the wall between the church and the lot. And it's all, from what Chris and our street department has told me, linked to poor drainage. So there's a drainage project that needs to be done, as well as correcting the retaining wall issues. So there is $15,000 budgeted this year to hopefully at least start to fix that problem. The other thing that would change is we wouldn't be able, with overnight parking there, we wouldn't be able to plow the entire lot. So we would plow into the lot as best as we can, but it would be the permit holder's responsibility to shovel out their own car. And then what this proposal also suggests is that these 9 spaces here become metered spaces to discourage employee parking and encourage that remaining open for patrons of the Broadway businesses, just like on-street parking. So I haven't approached the adjacent business owners with this proposal yet. I wanted to run it by you before I took it any further.
We all good?
And what about, so I think we've talked about this before, but Dr. Tan, there's no fee for the spaces that he has?
What I'm proposing, this is a clean slate. Other than the agreement, the 7-year agreement we have with the building of 19 South Water for the maintenance of, to lease that mural space. The city did that in exchange for a parking space. And so other than that space, and when that lease expires, it would be a clean slate.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Some people I'm sure will be happy, and other people probably won't be happy. But I think it does address, there's a mixture of residential and business in there. And, I think especially for the residential, it will be much appreciated having convenient parking.
And with people parking there overnight, the plow is able to actually get in and out of that space?
They back up. They already do back up generally. So it's just the rec department plows that with a pickup truck. So there is, like right here, there is a small area that we use for piling snow.
So basically they'd be able to push in, and that'd be about the extent.
Yeah.
To get the center lane cleared out, and then everybody else would be responsible for
their own spaces. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And they're not going to be jerks about it. They'll do, if this side doesn't have anyone parking in it overnight, that obviously will get cleaned out, things like that, but they'll do the best they can.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like a good proposal. Yeah, see how what response we get.
Sounds good, Liz.
Yeah.
All right.
One problem that I see, Liz, that we may have, if we get a deep snow, 15, 20 inches, where are the people going to put that snow that's beside and in front of their cars? In other words, we don't want them shoveling it right out into the middle.
I'll talk to Brian. Are you still on here? Or he might have left. The rec department does have the skid steer with the snow blower attachment.
Mhm.
So they probably could run that in there, loop around, and kind of, they could shovel it out into the walk, and then we could kind of shovel it out and get it on mechanic and push it or do something like that.
They're hauling
I mean,
away.
that's
Or haul
definitely
it away.
extreme.
Yeah.
That's an extreme circumstance. I
Sure.
mean, but we could get hammered.
We wouldn't want somebody shoveling their snow from their spot and covering the car next to it.
Why not?
But we see that on some streets.
Then you get the parking space wars like like we had in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You could, I mean, they could always coordinate too. Like, you know, if a bunch of people are you know, you just ride by and look at it every once in a while, and you just make another pass down through the center, you know.
Right, and if they could coordinate getting the cars out of there,
Right.
we could get rid of some of that snow. I know basically on our street, I try to get all the cars moved that the plow can go curb to curb, so they could do something like that there.
Sure.
Aren't you the street department friend, Commissioner Grove?
Yes, I police McCullough Street.
Thank you.
I need to do that on Centennial.
Okay, well, I will reach out to these parking spot owners to solicit their feedback and gauge their interest. And I would expect that we'll do a resolution kind of just saying that we're changing this and why at the April meeting.
Okay.
Okay, now scoot.
Good.
So a couple weeks ago, I got an email from a gentleman at Bird Scooters saying, we're interested in Frostburg. Can we talk? And I was like, really? Frostburg? And so I did have a Zoom meeting with him. And so he answered all my questions. I was confused about why Bird that you've seen in DC and New York and wherever else was interested in Frostburg initially. And they've changed or created a new business model where they have a local fleet manager that shares a portion of the profits. So there's incentive for them to keep the fleet up to Bird's standards, to keep the job. So these are battery powered scooters with a 30-mile range. They get docked on the street. I think there's a picture. That's what they look like. They're called their nests. So every morning or every evening, the Bird, I'm just going to refer to this person as the Birdman. The Birdman comes and picks up all the scooters at night, takes them back to their facility and charges them, cleans them up, does any maintenance that's needed, just goes over them. And then the following morning, the Birdman brings them back up and sets them at these nesting hubs like that. And then anyone that wants to use a Bird creates an account with the Bird app and can find a Bird on the map, and then they can scan to begin to ride. They several things of interest. Let me see if there's Okay, I'll just talk about this. Several things of interest is that they have what they call, now I lost the word. Give me 1 second. Like, they're called geofences. So the bird knows where it is and it can't go outside of certain areas. So, like, thinking it'd kind of be a disaster if someone took the bird down over 40 into LaVale and like couldn't get back up because they didn't have enough power. So it'd stop at, let's say, Weiss, and they wouldn't be able to go any further. It just powers down. It costs $1 to start, and then there's a per minute fee. And so you have to be 18 to ride. You either need a valid ID or license. Their laws are this, in terms of helmets, are the same as bike laws. So adults wouldn't necessarily need to wear a helmet. But what Bird does is you can order a helmet for them from them on your any ride for free, and it's shipped to you, and all you have to do is pay the shipping, which is like $5.
Wow.
The Birdman would adjust based on use patterns, where the bird, where they're docked in the morning. So potential to dock several over on campus to get downtown, which is, I'm sure, a big part of why Frostburg came up on their radar, is getting college students out to the city and back. I'm sure there's some other things that when you dock it, in Baltimore, when this first came out, there was a lot of national, or at least, probably national media again about like these scooters just being laid down everywhere in the streets and people just really ticked off. Well, when that happened, Bird had different leadership from what I learned, and they didn't ask permission. They just started putting scooters in the city. It's changed now, but obviously they're approaching us first. And when you park your scooter, because you're done with it, you have to take a picture of it, and it geo tags where you left it. So then if someone else with the Bird app or our police department were to see a scooter, leaned up against a building, blocking a sidewalk, they report it to Bird. Bird has a picture of how you left it. So if you mess up and sloppily leave your bird behind 2 or 3 times, you get booted and you can no longer ride a bird. So I thought that was a really good feature that you could replace it, or you could deal with it. If you were interested in moving forward with this, it's a 1-year commitment. You would have 30 days. And they only do it seasonally. So they'd be packed up probably in November and not resurface until March or April. And so let's say you wanted to do it for this coming calendar year. Once they went away in November, you'd have all winter to decide whether or not you wanted to cancel before they came back in the spring. They do go up hills. The bigger you are, the slower they go, but they still will go. And they're thinking that initially it would be 50 to 75 scooters. So there's other small communities that are doing it under this new model that's listed here, smaller communities. Pittsburgh, Kansas, Moorhead, Kentucky, that's the home of Moorhead State. So that's pretty comparable to us. But
they're super popular in Charlotte. Max used them when he was going to school down there, and a lot of the kids did. And I know when we visited down there, you saw them pretty much everywhere. So they are popular.
Yeah. So I felt like it was at least worth exploring to get more information to present to you. So if you have questions, I can see if I have notes on them. It's something that I already asked and I have a note on it here. Or if there's other questions, I could certainly ask that of Bird.
I would assume that the Bird company would have liability on these, that if somebody hit a pothole in the city and they wanted to sue the city because they've run over something, that we wouldn't be liable for things.
Yes, there would be an agreement between the city and Bird that would provide insurance requirements for Bird and indemnification for us.
Okay.
Good.
Elizabeth, were you saying that when people get to their destination, that there are certain places they need to park them, or that they can just park them?
They can park them anywhere, but they have to park them well within the community guidelines.
Okay.
So you can't just like leave it laying in the middle of the sidewalk or park it in the middle of the sidewalk. You have to park it. Then there's like I think there's here recommended parking. Always know where to park, and then they have a picture of how you should park it or which way you should orient it, kind of thing. So
Okay.
Would this be something that would be viable for maybe have them park some at the depot? That if somebody wanted to ride up from there on a scooter instead of walking?
Maybe a great idea.
Would it pull that hill?
One way to find out, Adam.
yeah, we can all
Not
try
with
it.
fat people, not with fat people like me and you, Adam.
It might be slow, but it would make it, I believe. But yeah, it'd be interesting.
I'd like to try it out.
Yeah.
Give us
Hey.
a demonstrator, Liz.
Yeah.
I can do that. I'll do that. I'll
Okay.
ask him. Would say we want to test it on our steepest hills.
Yeah.
Do you want me to just get a fleet of 5 so you all can go out together and do it?
Yeah.
That sounds like a great
Oh,
idea.
Now, Liz,
As long as you don't bring a camera, because it would be pretty funny.
That was my plan for sure.
Liz, how does that work as far as, I mean, can they travel right down Main Street? I mean, are they on the sidewalks
No,
or?
they're on the road like a bicycle. They
They
follow
are,
the
okay.
same road laws as a bicycle.
Well, I think it does seem like a nice way to get, an enticing way for college students to come into town and they hop on the scooter, they do the tutorial, then they start riding around, and that'll take them into town.
Mhm.
I hope.
Yep. Give us a fleet on, Liz.
Like some tryouts. We'll do tryouts. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'll see what I can do on that, and
Okay.
if I can arrange that, I'll shoot you all an email on when it will arrive. And
Perfect.
All
we'll go
right,
from there.
cool.
Perfect.
We'll meet at the depot.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
What goes up must come down.
That's right.
All right.
Okay. The last item I have for you tonight is results of the community communication survey results. There we go. So this we had as of today. I plan on leaving it open a little longer and advertising it on Facebook another time or two. But as of today, we've had 256 responses, and they went out in every single water bill with the city, and then we put it online as well. I don't have any strong feelings about this one way or another, but I'll just kind of tell you high level. What I saw is more people read the Times News than I expected, or use the Times News as a source of information about the city, and that an email opt-in service would really be a preferred way to get information about the city. And then in the case of emergencies, a text opt-in service would be also a preferred way. So right now for upcoming meetings of the mayor and council and other city boards, there is the email opt-in option through the meeting portal. So maybe spending more time promoting that through like a water bill mailing or through the
Or
Times
through the
News.
Cumberland Times News.
Yeah, would be good. So working on that. In the budget that was presented for you, there is money budgeted for a new website. And for example, the county's website has different alerts you can sign up for. So like I'm signed up for economic development news. And every time that they decide to post something on their website that's tagged with that, I get an email, and that is very convenient. So I think that'd be a really big criteria we'd be looking for in a new website is the email option. So you can scroll through this, and it didn't include the free response comments on this public document because there's some personal
Identified.
information. Yeah, people were complaining about neighbors by name or things like that. And I didn't want to put that out, but I can send that to you. But another thing that was a lot in that free comments is people like getting information through their water bill. So just being more cognizant of that's an effective way for the city to communicate things that are far out. So maybe like the one thing we get questions about all the time is our special garbage collections schedule. And we publish that 1 year synopsis, but maybe putting a half sheet in the water bill that's a quick synopsis of that in the future would be something the residents appreciated. Mm-hmm. But there were a lot of kind comments in the free responses that I saw too. So I'll share that with you in the future. But I think we'll be able to dig down into this more and look at this more, especially as we go into looking at a new website.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is all I have for you this evening. So any comments or discussion from the council?
The other thing I just wanted to mention was that Frostburg is going to get a nice rate up in Southern Living here in the very near future. So we all should be very, very happy about that. That's a widely distributed magazine read by many folks. So better days continue to come our way.
There's a Yahoo took that article and like made a little video that our enterprise fleet manager down in DC saw, and he was like, "Good, this is so cool. It's such an honor to be working with you," or something. I don't know. So, nice. But many thanks to the Allegheny County Tourism Office for all of their relationships that make things like that possible.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, all by 5 o'clock. So thank you for your 2 hours of due diligence, and enjoy our April showers come early.
Get my scooter.
And your scooter.
Get your video camera ready.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you. Have a good evening, all.
Yep.
Thank you.